Okay, here's a little video about how to set up your MIDI controller or a QWERTY keyboard to control synthesizers in Studio One. I found this to be a little cryptic. Normally when you plug in a USB MIDI controller to a DAW, there's little to no mapping you need to do. But in this case, this particular DAW does require some setup. So to do that, you go to Studio One, Menu, and Preferences, wherever the Preferences menu is. And as you can see, I've got a couple things here. I want to add a third controller that's not necessarily working right now. It's plugged in. My MIDI cable is plugged in and it's all set to go, but it's not controlling my synthesizer patch. So I'm going to add new keyboard, and I'm going to name it after the manufacturer and model that it is. This doesn't have to be exact. It just helps you keep track of your devices. You select receive from, and from the list of inputs, you select the device that you want to control it. And then everything else should be fine if you leave it the way it is and hit OK. Now it's in this list. Yet you are not done. You go to OK. And if we open up the synthesizer patch that we loaded here, this is a drum map. Notice that we have this little cog wheel here. If we go down here, then it should now show in my drop-down menu. Okay. Also, we go over here to Control and select Launch Key 25. And it will verify. It should show you all the things that are being controlled when you press buttons and move sliders and things on the controller you just created. And thirdly, check over here to make sure that this MIDI input is not selecting one of these other things. All inputs should be fine. That means it's listening to all controllers. To set up the QWERTY keyboard, or to use your keyboard, if you don't have a MIDI controller, you can go through the same process, but I'll show you where that is. Where you have to actually add the QWERTY keyboard, something I think that is a little silly. So let me go ahead and remove this, and I'll go through the process of showing you how to add it again. You go to Add, you go down here to PreSonus, and then the QWERTY keyboard is hiding down here. You leave all of your other settings default, and you hit OK. And now it's an option here in your list. Remember, this is in External Devices in your Preference window. So if we go over to our instrument again and click this little icon to open up our instrument list, we can go down here to QWERTY keyboard. To see our QWERTY keyboard, we can go down here to QWERTY keyboard, and it'll show us this floating window that tells us which keys do exactly what. I'm going to pin this so that it always stays on top. Again, these are things that in other programs are by default, but in this program it is not. So if I would like to control middle C, that's Q right now on my QWERTY keyboard. I can also use the tab key to sustain, to put the sustain pedal down if this were something that would work that way. Velocity sensitivity is not something you can control with a QWERTY keyboard, but you can set it at a lower level if you would like it to be quieter. And you can change octaves by clicking these buttons here. If I'm going to go down 2 octaves to C1, that's where my bass and snare live. And that way I can use my QWERTY keyboard to enter notes into my sequence here. So that's how to add either an external MIDI controller or to add your QWERTY keyboard as a controller to your Studio One setup.